This is called Golden Caterpillar. A golden caterpillar of light crept its way along the sofa's back, toward the drop-off and the floor. I wondered if it knew the path and if it knew where it was headed. Judging by its pace, it had done this before and was perfectly on time. She came back out with a corkscrew and a bottle and said that it could be the perfect dessert replacement, unless we wanted to go traipsing on the kind of mission that our friends had made their signature, and which would have demanded some kind of fitting preparation anyway. Her lips moved to one side of her face, pushing her cheek up on the other. In symmetry, her hip raised itself higher on one side as she held the bottle's neck at an angle. A small bit of skin showed between her top and leggings. Anything would have done, but it never felt like an evening in which all of the possibilities had a realistic chance of making it. I smiled and tried to say something funny. It had been one of those days that wouldn't end, where everything was right, everyone was infectiously happy, and time moved responsibly, instead of making you wonder where it had got to. The park was full, strongbows kept coming, and the sun was the way it was when you tend to feel incredible, which usually has you so aware of its progress that you see it drop every inch up the sky. But this day had legs. It was the kind of day that lengthened in the presence of friends who you didn't have to worry around, who you didn't have to try for, and could just enjoy. And it's the way it was with her alone as well as in the group, but even more. And so the day was bending itself like it never had. We were relaxed, and I never cared how she saw me. But that's because she knew me so well. He both restricted our intimacy and made it possible. As we refilled and spoke and drunk, dust continued to dance calmly into the light, softly twinkling like a glitter ball across the room. Up from the furniture, down from the curtains, dancing all the stuff that had come and gone over the year, and all the times that all of us had had. I checked on the caterpillar every so often, as by now the conversation was flying in a haze of nothing in particular, so immaterial and so accepting of the fact that it would never impress onto our minds, that our own voices became swallowed in the quicksand between us. I needed something to take me away from her face, and the caterpillar was good security. After that, there wouldn't be anything else. I don't know how much I was a part of it. It started off too innocently to worry about or do anything about, and then it was too late to have the strength to. And then I wasn't there at all. We'd done everything right, and the oven stayed simmering still next door, making sure that evening's reason kept wafting back in between us. But the dinner was settled, and neither of us thought the day was done. I think I was relying on a routine, recounting some story, which I'm sure she'd heard before but kept nodding to. Perhaps I was linking, re-referring, trying desperately to keep us from ourselves. Anything could have been being said. If you were looking in, you might not have thought we knew each other at all. I searched for the caterpillar, but it was gone. In one last stab at normality, she grabbed her iPod player in one hand and my hand in the other and said we should clock the sunset from higher up. It was ironic that this was romantic, but there was far too much going on for that to rub onto us. Sunsets were something our group were practiced in. I watched her lead us to the roof. She was holding the duvet loosely, corner of it dragging on the floor like a kid. She turned and smiled. The rooftop was restful, and the drop-off, nothing. Among us, the glistening suburbs looked as if they could earn the right to be cast into bronze and savoured for thousands of years. Further on, the tall buildings made it seem as if the whole city was turned west to face a rare miracle. Neither of us mentioned him, or anyone else for that matter. It seemed like we quite naturally consented not to. Like the way you manage not to mention your partner when you meet someone new who you'd think you'd like to kiss one day. And you convince yourself that you don't bring them up because you don't want this unique new someone to feel like you're marking yourself off bounds, as if you're overdoing it. But I think you probably just want to seem as interesting as possible. And no one is ever more interesting when inside a relationship. Despite all of this, which I was sure I was only going through because she was too, we still spoke in that relaxed and highly conventionalized way that the friend's lover and their lover's friend tend to when they find themselves alone. The way we always had. And so for months and months, and now almost 2 years, we were perfectly close and perfectly out of reach. During the inevitable silence, which the world was always waiting to throw onto us, which hit the way the wall might hit the marathon runner, we watched the tallest structures let the sun slide up and glimmer for its final moments at their peaks. And there it was, the last one, the golden caterpillar, crawling blindly up to the highest point the city had to offer. You would never have thought it was heading somewhere so high. It was hard to imagine that this was part of some common ritual and not some magical end. We'd held hands somehow, left in left, right in right, and were leading each other softly. Her eyes were big and clear. It felt like I could see more of the city in her than I could my own. It would have been odd to stare so hard, but in that moment it felt right to. Then, as the sunbeams instantly became a memory, she turned in from everything else and gave me this look, which haunted me the moment I saw it. It was a look which said she was sorry, that it was all beyond her too. It was disheartening and sad, and the most passionate thing I'd ever seen. Only the future could possibly explain to us whether we were right or wrong to allow those moments, and even then, it could only be at the very end, when all the scores have been settled, and all the love you've ever had has been bled out and left behind. We were just two bodies there, so close that we could see nothing in between, nothing beyond. We didn't arch into each other. It was far too late to deviate from the path of least resistance. I turned to her fully. Slowly, I crept my hands towards her stomach, spreading them out finely, when my fingers touched her skin. To savor it, but also slow, in the way of everything else, and to offer her, for the last time, the chance to show that it was me that was the sick one. But she stayed staring and parted her lips to breathe. I smoothed my hands to the small of her back, then gently pushed my fingers into her skin. She moved her hips forward towards me and crept her legs along my body's back until they came to rest around my spine. It was horrible to think that everything had led up to that moment. It did an injustice to it and tried to make everything that we had done pointed. But as there came only to be darkness left, nothing could disturb how she felt. I moved my hands up towards her neck, softly pushing. Her hair found its way through all my fingers. Crawling inwards, soon our breaths fed off each other, and our noses rubbed like two ice-aged bodies desperate for warmth. Our top lips touched and trembled, and before it had a chance to wake up, the last dark sliver left a space between us, and we met each other for that first stunning time. Thanks.